UAPs, unidentified anomalous phenomena. Are they extraterrestrial, interdimensional, time travelers in origin, or are they simply a result of top-secret military black projects, false flag alien invasion psyop, drones, or other human-made aircraft? Join UFO historian Don Ecker, MUFON State Director for New York Chris DePerno, retired veteran pilot Commander Cobra, and well-esteemed host and researcher Martin Willis as they discuss the latest news and topics regarding UAPs with a no-holds-barred approach on UAP Crossfire.
Hello, everyone. Welcome and Happy New Year to you all. First of all, it's just us three. The opening of the show kind of said a few people that aren't here. So missing tonight is Chris DePerno and Don Ecker. And we have an addition tonight. Marc D'Antonio is joining us down below.
Oh.
And I begged Commander not to wear those glasses. And
that's why the glasses showed up. The more you beg.
That's why they're there. Yeah, that's right.
I'm sure it's going to bring on the kind of emotional need out of the audience tonight.
Turmoil.
As it usually does. It's the first show of the year. Happy New Year to the greatest audience on the planet. And Happy New Year to everybody at KGRA DB.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's right.
This is so cool.
Marc
I like those glasses.
Marc,
yes, sir.
For the rare person that doesn't know who you are, you're an astronomer. You have an interest in this. And if you turn on the TV on a UFO, watch a UFO documentary or something, there's Marc D'Antonio all over the place. So, you're on a lot.
I'm a big mouth, so they want to... No, you know what it is? When you want to talk about this concept, right? And you guys both know this. You always find the people that dig their heels in, and they kind of are willing to ignore factual data in order to come to a conclusion. It was definitely extraterrestrial. It was alien. It was this. It was that. But you can't ignore the data, right? So my thing is I take a reasoned scientific approach. If the data is there, I'm on your side, man. But if it's not there, then I'm going to say, well, this assumption is incorrect.
Well, let me ask you this, Marc. Have you actually filmed and you spent a lot of time doing something and they just cut your whole part right out because they didn't like what you said?
Oh, that in the beginning that happened, and I kind of was able to steer some of the producers in a direction to allow me to state my case. And so far, it only happened with a couple of shows. In fact, only 2 shows, okay, which I won't name. But one was a Netflix special and one was another special for Discovery Channel. Those are the only 2 shows out of the ones I've done that actually massaged my words to say what they wanted to hear, right? And I absolutely hate that stuff. So, So I made it known, and they weren't happy, and we parted ways happily. But the thing was, now History Channel show Proof is out there. Okay, that's a show. Tony Harris, the host. I mean, that show. It's one of these shows that doesn't. You might have heard of the show. Okay.
Oh, he's been on. He's been on as a guest. Yes.
Oh yeah. Great guy.
Yes, he's nice guy.
Yeah, he is. And so, he has his pulse on a lot of the stuff that's going on. And they're not afraid to have their ideas thwarted, blown up, explained. And I'm also not afraid to see their evidence, right? I mean, you've got to have an open mind, because I'm convinced they're here, they being extraterrestrial species. Cobra's convinced they're here. Okay, just look at him.
I know.
He's welcoming them.
Gray beard, eyes, gray beard.
The eye. It's the eyes. It's the eyes. Right?
Yeah, I was on someone's radio show, pre-recorded, and they asked me my opinion of, I forget what UFO incident or whatever it was, And I said something along the lines, well, yeah, when you first look at it, it looks really good. And then they edited out everything because I go into how it was, but it's absolutely not. It's nothing, it's nothing at all. And they edited out every single thing that I said against it.
Yeah.
So it made it sound just like I was condoning that it was a real UFO. So that's the way that goes.
They did that to me too.
Yeah.
That's
Let's
one of
jump
the two
in.
shows.
Yeah, this is a show tonight about 2023, the year in review, and I'm just going to read over some of the highlights. I thought it was a banner year myself, and there's a lot of people talking out there that 2024 is going to be when all kinds of things happen. We'll see. We seem to hear that, these things, and sometimes they come true, sometimes they don't. So
we do hear it every year, Martin.
Oh, is it every year? It might be.
Let me pose a question, Mark, before you read the list.
Sure.
Do you two think we had an incremental increase in disclosed information this past year in 23?
Yeah, I do.
I do.
I agree. I think as well. I think a lot of cracks, although the thing to hold in your hand and grasp may not be there. I don't think anybody here expects that. I don't think it's needed. You guys know my personal opinion that I don't need anybody outside to confirm what I believe in this particular subject. But I think a lot of cracks on how information is packaged, distributed, is showing.
I agree with that.
I think that 23 was an important year for that. If you step back and look at some of the things that occurred, I think your list, Martin, really reflects that.
I was going to say that the stuff we're going to talk about tonight is going to illustrate what you just said. Okay, so I'm looking forward to this. Thank you for inviting me, by the way.
Oh, yes. Glad you're here, Mark. Really glad you're here. All right. So what I chronicled, and this is just a couple of highlights. Believe me, a lot more happened during the year. But February 4th, the U.S. shoots down a Chinese spy balloon in South Carolina, and yours truly was right underneath it. A lot of you people that listen to this show, listen to my show, know that I happened to be right under it in Myrtle Beach when it was shot. That was pretty exciting. And so there was also another shoot down in Alaska on February 10th and on the 11th, high altitude in the Yukon. That cost the U.S. government $1.5 million to shoot all those three down. I thought it was really interesting that they were done in succession like that, one right after the other. Okay, next, there was a lot of talk about whistleblowers and crash UFOs and reverse engineering prior to David Grush coming out. I heard the chatter a lot from people telling me someone was going to come out. And I know George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell, think of whatever you want to say. They both had said something, I believe, right before the end of the year, last year, that there was going to be these whistleblowers coming out. And also Chris Mellon talked about it. Gary Nolan spoke of it. Gary Nolan had a lot of things to say this year that were really quite incredible. He also held the SOL, the Soul convention out in California. That was very, very popular, and I was very sorry I missed it. Okay, in April, there was a Senate congressional hearing on UAP. It was not a lot of action there, not really highly attended at all, but that changed in July, of course. We'll be talking about that in a second. May 31st, NASA's Bill Nelson discusses a budget to look into the UAP problem, if that's what you want to call it. And they budgeted a whole $100,000 for that. I think that's pretty.
Is that before inflation or after?
That's buying one lunch for NASA for everyone that works there, probably. And I did want to point out that there was a lot of people that came forward and really pushed for transparency. And I got to give it to people like Tim Burchett and Anna Paulina Luna. And of course, there was Gillibrand, Rubio, Matt Gaetz. All these people were really out there. and there was a lot of bipartisan this year. It was really good to see that people were, really trying to get some transparency to this topic. June 6th, that's the day that Ross Coulthart had his interview that came out in News Nation, and also the debrief came out with Leslie Kane and Ralph Blumenthal's article about David Grush. So that was June 6th, and that was really something. And, I don't know if either one of you remember, but it was supposed to be like a week or something before. I remember people talking about, oh, something's coming out on Monday. You're not going to believe it. Monday goes by, nothing happens. And it was like a week later, that's when everything came out. So I think it was held back a little bit. I'm not sure what happened, but that's what they were all talking about at that time. Other news media gets involved. Mainstream, I still think, has a long way to go when it comes to this topic. But we did see mainstream media at least cover quite a bit of this. The Hill does an excellent job. Again, News Nation, my hat's off to them. They're a new news media, and I think they're doing a heck of a job. Ross Coulthart is there as a full-time reporter, a journalist now. June 9th was this crazy story about 9-foot-tall aliens in Las Vegas. A lot of controversy about that. We're going to be talking about the controversy and what we feel about it and all that. July 26th was the congressional hearing for the whistleblower David Grush, and also the pilots David Fravor and Ryan Graves. I was lucky enough to be able to get in that room. August 13th, the report of the so-called alien attacks in Peru began. I think they're still ongoing. People are still talking about that, or they were just a few weeks ago. All right, September 13th, Jaime Musain shows the so-called alien mummies at the Mexico congressional hearing. We'll have opinions about that, I'm sure. September 14th, NASA's Bill Nelson says there's no evidence of extraterrestrial encounters here on Earth. There was a lot of back and forth that Bill Nelson was kind of contradicting himself, and I think he did also make a stand against David Grush as well, I do believe. Netflix Encounters comes out, and I personally liked a couple of the episodes. I wasn't very thrilled about the other two. Okay, both House and Senate, this is kind of in general, both House and Senate presented bipartisan UAP amendments to the National Defense Authorization Act. The Schumer-Rounds Act is gutted. We talked about that in one of the UAP crossfires here. And lastly, at the very end of the year, I kept hearing this. Michael Schellenberger kept coming up and talking about things, and he made some quite some claims. I don't know if anyone has actually seen one of his interviews, but he says that he has talked to 4 firsthand, highly credible witnesses about non-human intelligent craft, reverse engineering, and biologics. And he also claims that he has information that China and Russia may also be involved in reverse engineering UAP. So that's kind of the highlights. And I don't know, do you want to, in order, do you guys want to discuss these? I mean, we've got a couple of hours. We can start right off the bat and about the, I thought it was kind of funny. We have the Chinese spy balloon and all of a sudden those 2 others, and then everybody's talking about UFOs. Kind of all tied in together. Yeah,
when the Chinese spy balloon thing happened, I had a friend in the intelligence community send me extremely detailed photograph of the actual thing that was flying in the sky, and it's a very complicated device. It had, and now we know, and everybody knows, it has motors on it to actually fly and steer itself in a particular direction, but it's a balloon. So the motors are generally a suggestion, especially when you're fighting against a jet stream,
right.
But this was so high up there that it could have been actually above the jet stream, in and out of the jet stream, but used it to get across the country and then probably went up higher in some way by either dropping ballast of some kind, like water or something like that. I'm not sure. But when you send a helium balloon up into the sky, now you're fighting a battle of pressure, right? As the pressure drops outside the balloon grows in size, becomes more visible. And so you have to have enough air, enough helium in there to lift and hoist that payload you have on it to begin with. But as that balloon gets bigger, there you go, right? That's actually not the Chinese balloon, but it's another one that was similar that we produced. Actually, I think that's a different one.
Okay,
Yeah.
I googled that, and that's what came up. Okay,
Yeah, no,
right.
that's that's good, because that was one of the early ones that was put out there. This is the Chinese balloon, but it had a big strut on it, and the Chinese balloon actually had large solar panels and motors, so it looked a little different. But that's okay, because again, they probably stole it from us. In fact, they were using American internet companies to send their data back to them. So it's like,
Oh my God.
I know, why not? Hey, we make the provision and we take their money. So, so anyway, when you were down, there's Virginia Beach, I think you finally saw it, I believe, right, Martin? Myrtle
Beach.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Commander. When you were in Myrtle Beach and you saw it up there, did you know you were looking at the Chinese spy balloon, or did you go looking for it?
I had just come back from a cruise, and the last I had heard, the Chinese balloon was in the Midwest. So when I got out of the car, the real estate agent said, "Well, there's the Chinese balloon overhead." And I said, "Yeah." I laughed. I said, "Yeah, it looks just like it." He goes, "No, it is it." And then we saw these fighter jets moving around the sky. And I have another picture too, exactly when it was hit by the.
Well, you got a great video. You have a great video.
Yes, I do have a video too. Yeah.
Obviously,
anyway,
the missiles they fired didn't have a warhead. It was just like a needle trying to puncture that thing.
It was a ballistic shot. And if you got close enough, even if they didn't hit it, hell of a good shot, by the way.
Yeah.
It would have, just by the going close to it, would have caused the balloon to collapse.
It would have ripped it to
yeah. Start.
Wasn't that thing like 100 feet high or something? It was really big.
The balloon?
Right? Yes, it was really big.
Yeah, it was high enough that it was expanding in size, of course. It was much smaller on the ground, right? But then as it got higher, it began to expand in size as the pressure dropped, So, yeah, and I think that, but again, it was a very complex payload under a very centuries-old technology, which I thought was pretty cool.
Well, there's a couple of things I find really interesting, direct connection to UFO, UAP activities with this whole event. The first one is one of the rumored activities that was occurring at Roswell was our version of a similar balloon system to monitor atomic detonations over the Soviet Union. And it was a very, very classified program, very sensitive program.
Yeah.
Satellites weren't there yet. The U-2 was coming online, and they were using this capability where they would just keep putting these balloons up. They would go through a very mechanical physics kind of experiment of expansion and contraction, and they would hope to recover them when they came back around the globe.
They had to do that because they couldn't transmit the data.
Right.
So they had to collect film cans
to go forward.
They had to collect
another one, and I want to put a shout out to Ray Skamansky. He wrote 50 Shades of Grays, and then he wrote Swamp Gas My Ass. And the reason I bring up Swamp Gas My Ass, heck of an interesting guy, engineer. If you haven't read his books, he's got a few others in this series. Tremendously interesting character. I've had a really good phone call and email relationship with him. He was at Wright-Patterson and started his look into UFOs. He got interested, and he takes a very engineer kind of approach to how he did the work. Well, the Swamp Gas My Ass book talks about an F-106 that chased something over the Great Lakes, and it's the two pilots. He does a tremendous job explaining what they did, what they encountered, what happened. They obviously had something that they had seen over the Great Lakes. And the reason I bring that all up, tremendous books, we shot another balloon down over the Great Lakes. Now, that one undoubtedly was a club balloon, these people that put up the small balloons. But at that point, we were in a frenzy. Politically, we got into this frothy mouth routine that anything that was flying around and anything that was over water, we were going to take a shot at.
That's right.
And I think it's very instructive to possible reactions to other things that come up, how we're going to do that. And I will put a shout out. The F-22 that did that shot was pretty incredible. Pressure suit at absolute maximum ceiling on that airplane and pulled that shot off. Heck of a deal. Heck of a deal.
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty amazing shot myself, especially since it didn't have a warhead.
Plus, it's very hard to get a radar return on that. I mean, they had to do some very impressive work with that airplane.
Yeah, and the balloon was not moving fast. They were the ones moving fast, and by the time you see
was at
it's already past
60,000.
you.
60,000.
That was at 60,000 feet.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's
that
up
was
there.
a high altitude. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Well,
But the other two shoot downs were really interesting, and they kind of went away.
Dead Horse, Alaska.
They never
Dead Horse.
found. Did they not find either one of the last two?
The Dead
Or
Horse
was it-
Alaska one was that they identified where it went down, but it was in a frozen area of the ocean there. So it's there somewhere, but the weather it's simply prohibitive to go up there and try and hunt for it.
Well, I'm going to say I slightly disagree since I flew Dead Horse, Alaska, in a little tiny airplane. Nothing as sexy as the airplanes these folks are using. And I flew there when the sun doesn't come up over the horizon over Christmas in 2016.
Yeah.
And there were people out on the ice putting expeditionary airfields where they practice basically carving a runway and making a facility. So I'm a little bit doubtful that we couldn't figure out how to get a helicopter up there or a recovery team. And when something drops out of the news rapidly, and I know we live in a crazy news cycle, and I know that we have 2 minutes worth of interest and 2 minutes worth of attention span, my antenna go up. You can't see the antenna. The glasses is all you're going to see tonight.
I
No
was
antenna.
looking
tonight.
hard to see.
Martin couldn't stand it if my antenna popped up, but that one still gets my attention.
Yeah, I'd like to know what went down in Dead Horse. Now they say it went down in Dead Horse, Alaska, but it doesn't mean it went down in Dead Horse. It could have gone down anywhere within 100 miles or more of Dead Horse. And up there,
Sure.
I have no idea where that is. I wonder where it is. And the Lake Huron one, well, if it went down in the lake, I actually had said when they shot that one down, I said, there's a university or a ballooning club that's now really pissed off because they spent $800 to get their balloon to space kit, and it got shot down. So where that is a badge of honor.
But consider
my balloon got shot down.
the immortality of all the clubs in that part of the world that are claiming that they have been besmirched, and the fun driving that you can get out of something like that.
You know what? And they probably will be able to put up a bigger and better one very soon and take it up to 120,000 feet with Robbie the robot on a little stand sitting out there looking at you from 120,000 feet as the latex balloon bursts over your head. I think that's cool.
I think that's something worth aiming for.
I know.
It's interesting, though, balloons and their connection to historical UFO sites, events, and even in our sophisticated times or so-called sophisticated times, it still comes up.
Yeah. And you know what? NASA hasn't stopped their love affair with the balloon. How about that? There's the LDB, the long duration balloon, is going up, and it's carrying a massive telescope setup that's going to be studying the cosmos. Okay. So why are they doing that? Why not satellites? Well, there's a bunch of reasons why balloons are better than satellites under certain conditions. And launching a balloon with this equipment is millions of dollars cheaper than launching a satellite. Okay. So that's obviously it does hit the budget in the right place, but it also affords you the ability to loiter in one location for a while. Satellites go around the Earth roughly every 90 minutes at like the ISS altitude, and a little bit longer at higher altitudes. Okay, so you can't depend on satellite being able to always be looking at your target. So as the Earth rotates, sure, it's going to change, but for many hours, you can still be looking at your particular target. So maybe the balloon at high altitude looked far better. And those are unmistakably human, but they're going to be mistakenly identified as UFOs. I'm waiting for that to happen.
It may be part of the it may be part of the program. I'm always one that's going to believe that crowdsourcing reactions of the public, how they are responding on social media to a number of announcements, events, and things that go on is always part of the plan. It's always up for the game.
That's for sure.
There's something called like geostationary satellites where
Correct. Geosynchronous
and
actually is the word that I think you're searching for.
They're 22,000 miles out.
These are way out.
It's
so
expensive
far away
to get them there. But you see, the thing is, like, as you know, we have our remote telescopes in the Arizona desert. And when we open up the observatory and start broadcasting to the world, what we do is we look at a constellation. And sometimes you see over the course of 20 or 30 seconds, you'll see a little line. Okay. A little tiny faint line. And what is that little tiny faint line? That's a geostationary satellite. But wait, geostationary satellites are supposed to be in one place over the Earth. It is. The telescope is moving to follow the stars. So it drags out the satellite, which stays over the same position on Earth. You're not. You're pointing at different positions every second, every split second. You're moving slowly toward the west. Okay, so you're going to drag out a little line. So we know how long geostationary trails are. They're about that big on our images. See that big. So just store that.
That's a scientific measurement, by the way.
Yes, exactly.
That is true.
It should be royal almost. It should be like in a museum. Your finger in a sculpture showing that held at this distance.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, but I mean, I could give you the figure in arc minutes if you want, but the thing is that the bottom line.
Maybe after the break.
Maybe after the break.
I want it to to be accurate. This is a tough audience. Okay, if you think my glasses make people crazy, just get that arc minute wrong, and we'll never hear the end of it.
Hey, we haven't been doing much crossfire. We haven't argued yet, but I'm sure we'll have plenty of time.
Oh, we're supposed to argue? Is that what this is about?
Well, I've never been here before. Bill tried to make it. No, just have different opinions, I think.
Well, see, Don isn't here. And when Decker's here, the arguments can ensue because he's very good at instigating those things.
Oh, he lives for it. Yeah.
I know.
We haven't seen that, Mark. 23, it was incredibly smooth run in every respect. In fact, I hope he's watching us tonight. I hope.
Well, let me say in my best Don Ecker, the man that I love this guy, like, tell me something, Commander. Do you think that the government is hiding this stuff from us?
And you almost know that if you say no, Don, he's begging you.
Blow up.
He wants you to say that.
He's begging you to do it because it reminds me of the moment. Can you imagine back in the day, him pulling somebody over and go, do you know you were speeding?
It's like, well, no, thanks for telling me.
I just thought you wanted to meet me. That's why you pulled me over.
That's right. Yeah.
All right. So
go ahead, Martin. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. So moving on to the April Congressional UAP hearing. I mean, that barely made the news. And
interesting, isn't that?
Well, isn't that the one where they just released the report, right? And they said there was just like they had identified a certain number of UAP.
That's right.
Okay.
600, something like that.
To me, that the report, what we call the bluff statement, bottom line up front, no pun intended, bluff statement in this case, is nothing to see here, folks. We investigated. Yeah. Everything is okay.
But there were unknowns in that report. There were unknowns in that report. I think they had
the vast majority was nothing to worry about.
Yeah,
and that's
vast majority were
we couldn't
dismissed.
figure out. Well, you can trust us.
But I know that we've noticed that in ufology anyway, right?
Oh,
That,
for decades.
99.5% of them, all of them, are identifiable. And I'm MUFON's chief photo and video analyst. When I see these images and videos come in, I've gotten to the point where I can start to identify the birds and the insects. In fact, no lie, if I study the ones with insects on them long enough, I can tell you what kind of insect it was, because the wing beats can show up. And based on the date and time and location and the frequency of those wing beats, based on the exposure time, I could actually come up with the insect that might have made those. So
what about that 0.5 that you can't, though? That's the part I love best. And in test flying, if I ever got it down to 0.5 uncertainty in test flying, I would be walking on my hands. We were happy when we got it down to 3%, 4% of uncertainty when we were testing something. That was considered unbelievably good. And that's the part that I know this is a shared enthusiasm by all our hosts and our special guest with us tonight. Why is there not just absolute amazement on that part that can't be explained and digging into that?
I have an idea about why that's true.
Oh, do share.
We're in the YouTube arena, man. Want me to say it like Don? We're in the YouTube arena. Everyone gets their news from YouTube, right? And unfortunately, when you watch a YouTube video, they're usually spoken with authority they haven't earned. Sure. And they make a point that they have no background to actually make. And so people take these points they watch in a YouTube video and make them their own, as if that's true. And the last thing I do is believe YouTube videos, okay? Because that's just a single individual's opinion. And usually those single individuals are not correct. They just want to be correct. Now, as far as the concept of alien life and whether they're here, we're in company. We're not saying we're in a company. I think they're here. I actually have been doing a lecture around the country, which actually earned me a cowboy hat when I did the talk in Edinburgh. There were hundreds of attendees, and I was doing this talk on this futuristic physics that could explain how they actually move and don't feel any inertial effects. Fifth dimensional travel, which is something that's Kaluza-Klein gravitons. It's a whole process that the Atlas accelerator over at CERN was built in part to look at the possibility of these Kaluza-Klein gravitons. So it hasn't fallen on deaf ears that this possibility is there, and even CERN is investing millions of dollars trying to figure out whether there's something to it, And I was talking about this propulsion concept and how alien spacecraft, for instance, don't even need propulsion. They just need to generate these particles that take them out of our 4 dimensions and into this 5th dimensional space, which is highly warped. The farther in you go, the smaller all the distances are to everything else in the universe. And when you come back out, you're 10 light years away or 2 light years away or 1 inch ahead of where you were, depending on how far you go in. So what that necessarily means is they oscillate back and forth between this 5th dimension and this 4th dimension, XYZ movement through time. What we all know as the universe. But they oscillate back and forth. And do you know something? That oscillation and the effects therein are exactly what's reported. The color changes, the flickering, the vanishing from one spot, reappearing in another. Oh, yes, I can give you all the science for why that happens too. And, atmospheric scintillation could explain the flickering. Losing something in the sky because our eyes are always hunting. Okay, the autokinetic effect can explain why it looks like it's there when it goes over there. But, the bottom line comes down to this. You can't discount the possibility that we're seeing this advanced physics in play. And all an alien ship has to be is, there you go, an alien ship.
No, that's a 5th dimension.
Yeah. 5th, yes, I get it, yeah. All an alien ship needs is the ability to push itself into that 5th dimension by surrounding itself with these particles, all right, and then come back. Now, how would it do that? this explains their shape. Everything ties together. That's what's interesting. Remember the flying saucer? It was round. The triangle, okay? It's round inside. You can inscribe a circle inside a triangle. They're particle accelerators, and they're generating these particles that take them out of our 4 dimensions and into the 5th. And when they do that, they can literally appear to just vanish from your sight. Something we're not familiar with in our 4 dimensions. We don't ever see something simply vanish for real. You can't be standing in front of me and then boop, you're gone, and your glasses fall to the ground. Okay.
Well,
that
The glasses would
too bad
go
the
with
glasses. Too bad the glasses wouldn't vanish. But yeah.
Oh, Martin, come on, look at this. This is cool. But the truth is, if that technology is in play, you know what that means? It means that there's no propulsion on the craft. It just is an accelerator. And this explains why they look the way they do. It explains the effects we see them. It explains the effects on the ground. It explains the visual effects. It literally explains everything, nearly everything about these craft. So we'd be remiss if we didn't look at this as a possibility. And so that's why I'm on board with it. And I did the talk in Edinburgh about this. And there was one guy, he was so taken by it, he gave me his cowboy hat. Okay. Now, do you know what a cowboy hat means to a Texan?
big deal.
That's a big deal. So he
So
gave
Mark,
me this cowboy
quick
hat.
question, Mark. Following that theory and following that line of thought, and I'm completely agreeing with you. If you were reverse engineering this, if you were stepping in the pathway to achieve this, I find a lot of room to understand UAP/UFO events that have caused rather crude effects on people that have been around the craft, things that aren't properly shielded. I think there's a lot to be seen, that if you're imitating this, it's, to me, like the fission fusion. Fission is it gets a lot of great results. It can do a lot of wonderful things, but it comes with a lot of side effects that we don't.
It's dangerous, yes. Fusion
But
doesn't.
it really takes some advanced capabilities,
Yeah, it does.
to contain a fusion reaction that works.
And fusion.
That's why I'm in such a radical or complete agreement with you that we are still working with balloon type physics here.
That's right.
And this is where it's headed to.
Right. Keep this in mind. Okay. To operate one of these craft that would generate these particles to take you into this 5th dimension, it would be used, and it would be a fusion reactor, an actual fusion reactor, not a fission reactor, a fusion reactor. Now, if it's going to be a particle accelerator, it means it's going to trap particles and move them in a very small ring, maybe 30 feet across. Our particle accelerators are miles across. Okay, like CERN, right? 20-something miles. Now,
in very few dimensions. You really can only control it in one dimension.
Right, we're moving it in 2 dimensions in a circle, and we're using high-powered magnets all along the edges. And as you try to take a charged particle and curve it, right? If you're trying to curve a particle, one of the problems you have is that particle does not want to do that curve, and it gives off a particular radiation that's dangerous to it. It's called synchrotron radiation. And so synchrotron radiation is given off the whole way around that light conduit, and that conduit in these accelerators, and they have to deal with it. Well, obviously, synchrotron radiation is a problem for these craft as well, at a much higher scale, because it's a smaller circle that you're containing these particle paths in, and you're going faster than what we're doing. You're approaching light speed, of course, but you're doing it in a smaller circumference. So you're moving particles, more volumes of particles to get this initial result. So how do you do that? How do you get rid of synchrotron radiation like that? We don't know. We can't yet do it. I mean, we have ways to trap it out. Okay. And they do that. But if you'll notice, inside the center of that ring seems to be the safest place to be. And so what happens is in the middle of the ring, that's where the occupants would be. The outer ring is actually the accelerator. And even they can't be in that because that would kill them too. They're organic beings and they are fallible. They do crash. I mean, I'm telling you, I think they're scientists and they're just traveling because they've figured out how. And it doesn't take long. You could go from here. Let's suppose we're using this technology. You could go from here to Alpha Centauri, theoretically, in about 20 minutes, right, with this technology. Now, if you ramp it up even further, you can get there even sooner. Now, the latest contender was the Alcubierre drive, and that would be 5 days to Alpha Centauri, as opposed to now with our current technology, 10 to 11, maybe 12,000 years.
Right.
Okay. So 5 days looks great. Hey, that's a short vacation, but it's way too slow if you want to explore a galaxy that's 100,000 light years across. To go 4 light years takes you 5 days. Holy cow. How far to go 50 light years? 1,000 light years. Now it becomes a problem with the numbers again. They're just too big a time scale for the travel. Do the dimensional stuff, however, and now you can make these great leaps of many light years at once using this fifth dimensional travel concept, and exactly. I'm not sure which guy was named after.
Yeah.
It's hard not to put that up when someone says that.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey,
Yeah.
It could be
gotta
hidden in
get
the
back on
lyrics of the
track.
music. Martin,
Yeah.
can I get a quick sideline in here?
Sure.
I first want to thank Fifi in the chat room for complimenting me on the sunglasses.
Finally.
Oh, she did, didn't she? I saw that.
Yeah, you got one there. Yeah.
Every time I have tried to answer or send this to Matt Andrews earlier in the evening put in an experience he had with black triangles and didn't report it. Every time I have written a message to him to pass an email for him if he would contact me about it, if he would like to contact me about it, it has been blocked. I find this amazing. 5 times I have tried to send in the chat this email, and the email for anybody that wants to ever talk to me, Commander Cobra KGRADB@gmail. You can throw the thank you, Fifi. The shades are awesome. But I cannot send this to Matt. So if Matt is still in the chat room, if he hears this, if he's interested, or he can go to Bill, and Bill Skywatcher can send that email off to him as well. Thank you.
Yeah, he just left a message, so he's there.
Great. Okay, so next on May 31st was the first NASA UAP hearing, and they talked about the $100,000 budget. I bet they spent
more on getting everybody together and on coffee and donuts than they're willing to put into the budget.
The facility rental was probably more.
I just think about how insulting that is and the scale of things that's going on. Is that, do you publicly say something like, if you had a budget that small being dedicated to that, why would you say that? Why would you disclose it? Martin, why would you disclose something that asinine?
I mean, even if it was, pardon me, but I mean, even like them saying, "Oh, we have $1 million budget." To me, that's minuscule when you hear about all these budgets. That's like nothing. I mean, when you hear about all these budgets for whatever it is they're going to look into. I mean, how much have they spent?
$500 million. $500 million, right? So yeah, no, it's true. So $100,000, that's basically just a statement like, yeah, we're looking at it. Don't worry about it. Hey, Frank, just make a folder. We'll say that sort of, it's like, it's basically just a clerical task that they're doing. Maybe assemble a few reports, and the money will run out in 6 months, and then they'll just be done with the activity.
So do you do something like that because you want to answer a congressional request before it becomes an issue? Do you show something? Is it a placeholder for future funds if future funds become available? There's a lot of things that could be added to that. It was the absence of logic to the statement that I found the most intriguing out of this. This is not an organization that is new to any of these subjects, anything new to budgets, making things work. I'm deep into a study on the X-15, an incredible test program, one that was rivaling everything that was going on with the capsule side of the program on Mercury, the work that it did, incredible stuff that goes on there. And in those days, that 100K was the kind of numbers they were throwing around, and they went 13. This is in late 50s, early 60s. They were up $15 to $20 million trying to get rocket engines thrown together, how they were going to make all this work. And $100,000 today is a joke that they would bring it out. What is the reason behind throwing a number like that out? It's amazing to me. That it's intriguing to me. They throw something like that because they want to catch a real knucklehead like me, my attention, and they got it.
Well, maybe they throw that number out there because that's their way of saying this. We know this is going to be an insult to you guys, and that's precisely why we're showing it to you. 100,000. Yeah, we'll give $100,000. We only told them $100,000. $100,000 for this activity. Yeah, that's it. So that's the idea, right? Maybe they know it's embarrassing, and maybe that's the idea. Because NASA has never, which is what the weird thing is, though, every single mission to Mars undertaken by NASA has had as its one of the major tenets the past or present exploration of potential life. So why are they so against the potential for life that has come from elsewhere? You know, you look at Earth, you look at how we're made out of carbon, fourth most abundant element in the universe. You know, it happened here. It happened elsewhere. It's that simple. So let's find them. They're looking for us. So let's look for them.
Maybe we already have.
Well, I think they already found us. Yeah. Okay.
And maybe we've already made contact with them.
And maybe that's true. You know, and you got to keep in mind, okay, the thing that you got to understand, we're carbon based. So there's another element in the periodic table that we absolutely need as carbon based beings to survive and grow and evolve. And that is oxygen. So we have an oxygen atmosphere, and that started building up 2.5 billion years ago. So for 2.5 billion years, we've been sending this signal out 2.5 billion light years saying, hey, there might be life here. You know, hey, look at me. Look at this blazing blue beacon. Okay, there might be life here. And that's the kind of thing that, Stephen Hawking said, we shouldn't announce our presence. Too late, man. We started it over 2 billion years ago, and it was an automatic process. Life made its own announcement.
That's right. And it's going to be signatures in the atmosphere, like you're saying.
Technical signatures too, yeah.
There we have Bill Nelson. And Bill, at, I believe, the first hearing, said something along the lines, I don't know if either one of you remember this. I want to say he said, who am I to say that they can't get here? And then, or something like that. Do you remember that?
Very close to that effect, yeah.
Yeah. And then, the second hearing, which I don't know, we might as well talk about now, the second hearing, when they basically said there's nothing to see here and there's no sign, we have no evidence at all of extraterrestrial life visiting here. He kind of did a 180, like he, all of a sudden he knows now. He didn't know then, but all of a sudden he knows now.
So interesting point, Martin. How much money was spent to get to that second hearing? Do you think it was more than $100,000?
Mm-hmm. You talk about the NASA hearing.
I'm talking about what was spent to do the investigation to have the second hearing.
Yeah.
I think that exceeds what they're talking about budgeting.
I would think so. I mean, just
right.
to have the.
And as someone said in chat, they already know the answer. That's why they're only going to throw $100,000.
Maybe true. Yeah. But you got to understand too, the turnaround from this guy is probably also from the more conservative side of the funding sources that NASA has that says, don't you be talking about these UFO stuff, okay? Don't be doing that. You know, you want to endanger your funding, okay? Keep talking about it. So they probably strong armed them because they personally don't believe it's out there. So that's why instead of who am I to say they're not here? That's a tacit assumption that they might very well be. And his funding sources, the people that are funding him, probably don't want to hear that, because they don't want to be labeled crazy tinfoil hatters. So he probably felt the pressure, and that's why he reneged on that. That's what I think could have happened.
Very well could. That actually makes sense. I believe.
Unlike some of the stuff I say.
No, I think that's really a good point. And
Mark, we would never accuse you of being a broken clock, right twice a day.
And I don't know if the first one, the first hearing or whatever it is they had, NASA had on the UAP, I thought was better than the second one. I don't know what you two thought about that. It seemed to, well, first of all, when they had the first one, that was very historic. I mean, this is one thing you got to say about 2023. It was a heck of a historic year when it comes to this topic.
Yeah, there was disclosure by the U.S. government.
Yeah,
to a level
to some degree, mature conversation that they attempted to have. I will grant that, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So, but I got the feeling that for years they were running an inquisition, and then they wanted to have a hearing to say, okay, we were wrong in the inquisition, but they never really said that. And I guess that's where they never said, all the stuff that we did in the past, some of the mistakes that we made, there was no even attempt to brush that. Then you get into that very very uncomfortable 1 week, one hearing, one presentation. There's something going on. The following one, now we looked at it. We took some hard cash. We pulled out 100 G's, and we have come up nothing. It's all good.
A whole 100 G's. I'm sorry, I just think that is really funny. I think when we come back from the break, we're going to break here in just a few minutes, but let's talk just about your thoughts on people like Tim Burchett, Anna Paulina Luna, and Gillibrand, Rubio, all those people, Matt Gaetz, all those people that had the balls, basically, to really try to push for transparency and really get to the bottom of this. I think that's really fantastic. When have we ever seen that before?
Not in public disclosure, not with the engagement. And if their hearts are not pure, if this was a political ploy purely, I'll still take it, because it's pushing something in the direction of what I hold dearest, liberty. I don't want this kind of nonsense that my government doesn't work for me. Let me know what the facts are. Let me know what is true, what isn't. And if it's a threat, if there's another problem, I want to know that. I don't need them to filter it for me. And I think we're well past the point of studies from the 50s and 60s of this kind of announcement will make the world collapse upon itself if it comes forward. And that may be what, as I think Don has said it, Chris has said it, Martin, you definitely have. You were foretelling this years back. Is this preparation? Is this preparing us for something that they can't control, or they know is inevitably going to come out? Maybe. But I think from a political standpoint, a very diverse group of people that you named there took a pretty big step up on it. And if it was testing the waters, they did okay with it. This didn't turn into a ridicule thing for anybody out of that. And that's a good sign. That is a very good sign to me.
Yeah. And the thing that I find fascinating, looking back at the year was the fact that they said it over here, then over here, then over here, and at different times. In other words, it wasn't all to just satisfy one particular storyline in one particular 5 minutes in front of the cameras. It was an ongoing process throughout the year. And to me, it's significant that now we've heard from officials in our government for the first time that they're actually looking at this seriously and admit that there are unknown objects in our skies. When that's something that the U.S. government has never, ever said, lest we forget.
Well, they did and they didn't. You know, I mean, you talk about what's that report in 1947? What am I trying to think of? Where they said that's not fictitious. These are, you know, credible witnesses seeing incredible things. I forget when what that report was called exactly.
Right. Yeah,
but you know what I'm talking about. So, but I mean, they have, but not like not physically in a public venue. You're right about that. Not verbally.
Yeah, they've never stated that it was that there are true potential extraterrestrials, and they still won't use that term. Okay, which is fine, but that's why they invented the term UAP. UAP was a rebranding of UFO, right? Because UFO meant tinfoil hat. So they wanted to get rid of that. So go make it something new. We'll call it a UAP. All right. And
phenomenon is nice. Covers a lot of turf.
Exactly. And so UAP, and we'll brand it ourselves, and then we'll supply the definition and the narrative. Now it's not a tinfoil hat thing anymore. And now the government feels comfortable being able to ally with UAP, not UFO, but UAP. And so that's another reason why people are coming out of the woodwork to talk about it, because it's acceptable now, because it's a trusted and government activity term that was created and rebranded.
Yeah. Okay.
That's
so we're going to go to break.
Yep.
We're going to go to break. We'll be right back. Thank you all. And this is Martin, Commander, and Mark, and we're signing out for a few minutes.
Hey members, the new KGRA DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA DB.
You're listening to the KGRA Digital Broadcasting Network. We provide unparalleled coverage of trending news in the world of ufology, cryptozoology, and paranormal phenomenon. Whether you're watching our video live stream or listening to one of our audio programs, you are getting the best from world-renowned researchers and hosts, guiding you through topics the mainstream won't touch. Miss one of your favorite programs? No problem. Head over to the members area at kgradb.com for access to our massive library of award-winning content. Make contact, stay connected. Only at kgradb.com.
Hello, we're back. And so again, this is Commander Cobra, Marc D'Antonio, and myself, Martin Willis, and enjoying the conversation, gentlemen. I have to say, I'm having fun with you two tonight. It's kind of relaxing, you know. It's easy going, and there's yeah, it's not we haven't really
So
gotten in an argument yet.
We're supposed to argue more.
I think we are. I think we have to.
I'm holding out for more money before I start the arguing.
That's right. Well, I'd like to buy an argument, please.
And I'm not talking NASA money, okay? I'm talking real
that's
money.
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
From now
NASA
on,
money.
that's going to be. I'm not talking NASA money. I'm talking Pentagon money. That's the kind of money we're talking.
Now, see, the problem I
That's
have
right.
is that I agree with both of you guys and your way your takes. I don't have anything I disagree with you guys about. So that's why this is becoming kind of a love fest episode.
I think that's what it is. But you know, it's good. It's good to mix it up so we don't always have to have these things where I almost stand up and walk out. You know, that type of thing.
That I'd like to see. Has that happened before?
Almost. No, but we got through it. We got through it. Commander brought us back in together. He smoothed it over.
It was like that scene in Top Gun. Okay, I had to get everybody back on the target. You know what I mean?
That's right.
All right. So this is what happened next, June 6th. So all of a sudden, like I had said, it was the week. It was supposed to be the Monday. I believe the Monday before. Everyone was saying, and even at Bill at KGRA Radio. I mean, he told me, I believe about 2 or 3 weeks before, that we have a major whistleblower is coming out, and he's going to be talking about craft. I can't remember how Bill actually found that out. But so anyway, David Grush comes out. You know, there's some people have negative things to say about him. I personally think he's completely earnest in everything that he's done. I don't believe I feel any part of him that is, you know, embellishing or making things up. He did everything the right way. He was an official whistleblower. And then when the hearing happened, you know, he was under oath, and, you know, he had a lot to risk by doing this. And so I guess I got to ask, I don't know, Mark, what do you think about?
I'm not sure he had a whole lot to risk. I'll tell you why. If you come out and say you know all this top secret stuff, and you know, I mean, look we've worked in programs like this before, right? So if you say that you have all this top secret knowledge, you just go blurting it out. Do you really think that you're going to, you know, be able to stay non-incarcerated or do that penalty free? I think it went down somewhat differently. I think it went down like this. They knew the guy, that he was into this. They knew that he was interested in telling the story. So they said to him, I believe that in the upper echelons, they said, okay, Grush, we'd like you to be the spokesman. We'd like you to go out there, but here's what you can say and here's what you can't say. Okay? You can tell them this much. Don't tell them this much, but we'll let you be the lead on this. And that's why whenever he spoke about it, he was gleeful and always like, well, he was acting like he was almost autistic, you know, just, you know, going to town and staring straight ahead and gleefully with a smile on his face, telling these things. Well, can you tell us where these ships are? Not in an open session, but in a closed session. Yeah. Okay. I mean, now, first of all, when people heard that I think, based on my involvement with some of these programs in the past, that most likely it's not that it's aliens that is the big secret, but the technology that we use to discover that it was aliens is the big secret. And Grush couldn't come out and talk about that technology in an open session like that, because the question would come up and he'd have to say, well, I can't talk about that. I can't talk about that. So the closed session, I think, was to say, well, we use this particular TS project to identify this particular frequency that was being given off by this particular ship, and that's how we found the ship. I mean, all the stuff he would have to say would be a giveaway, I think, of top secret information for some type of devices they use to actually acquire these craft.
Commander, what's your thoughts?
So I'm going to dovetail a little bit with Mark. You have, I know, please don't let anyone in the audience or my co-host tonight be shocked by the statement as I make this. You have competing rival groups within every organization, viciously fighting over budgets, viciously fighting over capabilities, the parlay of having control. They're lined up with industry. They're lined up with powerful people in the government. And then, of course, you have the whole bureaucratic part that's not elected that, goes decades in positions and roles. So it kind of fits with what Mark is saying. You have someone that's willing to take this, has an enthusiasm that plays well, probably was measured, probably was screened and rated how it would work well. And we had a lot of other things around it. So there was this continuing rolling out. There's things about his descriptions, about his testimony that make me a little bit more than uncomfortable. It has a look, and I don't mean any disrespect at all to him. I don't know him. I'd love to talk to him in person. But I remember defectors in the end of the Cold War, which was the period that I spent my starting out years, that were paraded around and brought in. They were brought in and they would talk to us. Inevitably, I saw one individual twice. And in each one of his presentations that he gave, he named organizations and units that were in that audience. Not in both appearances, but specifically the parts, units that were in that audience. To get like that connection with the people that were listening. That what he did was when we still had East Germany, he was a signals guy. He listened to units. He did signal intelligence. He listened to raw transmissions, and he named units. He named exercises and missions and things that went on. And it was like they were trying to make the point, watch out what you say, follow our emissions control policies, follow the procedures, because here's living proof. Here's a defector who's come in and said this. Now, I'm not trying to cast aspersions. I'm just trying to say that the way the presentation rolled out obviously stayed with me many, many years. I'm talking close to 40 years now when this occurred. And I'm looking at that, back at that. There seems to be certain seeded kinds of parts of how it was presented. It was packaged, how it was maybe even rehearsed. And if I was going to make statements at Congress, I would be rehearsing it. I wouldn't just be going in and talking off the cuff. So there's some stuff that's uncomfortable with it. I think it moves the ball further down the field. I'm interested to see what happens next. But one thing that I'm always going to want for closure with this is, why do you say what you're saying? And why hasn't there been the closed door meetings? Why weren't the people mentioned earlier? Why didn't we have the classified closed door testimony to go forward? Why didn't that occur? Why didn't that happen? Or did it happen and we're not allowed to hear it? Which to me is a worse situation. I don't need them in a classified briefing to come out and say it. I want them to tell me they had the classified briefing. I want to know that was put out. And then I can say, okay, what are we doing about it? You can't disclose it. I think Mark is spot on. It's interesting that you have technologies that you're developing to counter some military problem. And then you find out that it has an application a different way. And the quick one I will give here is when the Brits who are the creators of a very practical form of radar going back to the 40s. The Germans were building theirs at the same time. Still used a very long wave capability that they were able to spot the F-117 in certain circumstances during Desert Storm. The other interesting part is they kind of alluded to there was another aircraft involved during those strikes. 117, obviously fantastic stealth capability, but it didn't have a lot of onboard systems to do that. It's always been rumored that there was some other aircraft accompanying them to do those very precise strikes in those missions. And there's pretty good evidence that they may have spotted it in fleeting parts of it. Do we have a similar thing here? Do we have a technology we developed for something else that's now showing the ionization that Mark talked about earlier that is setting up the ability to detect? Or have we taken away a cloaking capability that visitors might be using that we're starting to break into that sense? So, yeah, I want to hear more from him. I'm uncomfortable with some of his descriptions and some of his testimony, and I'm glad he spoke up.
Yeah. So I did get to meet him. Here's a picture of me shaking hands with him. He's a tall guy. It's pretty funny. There was I think I have a film. I filmed at the same time when I met him, and it looks like I see Chris DePerno.
Hey, look who's here. He was there and he's gone.
Yeah, I heard the show was too mellow, so I thought I'd come in.
Oh yeah. Uh-oh.
Well, we want to wish your wife a happy birthday.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a wonderful birthday dinner. We had a great time, and it's wonderful being married over 30 years to the same woman, and God, it was just enjoyable. And now I came back and I'm listening to Marc D'Antonio saying he loves you two guys, and I think it was getting too syrupy, and so I thought I'd come in and stir the pot a little bit.
I'm going to call the BS card. You heard I had the glasses on and you were coming on. That's
I
what
love those glasses.
I had the alien eyes on and you wanted to see them again.
Yeah, you know what's missing?
I want to tell everybody what a wonderful Christmas present Commander Cobra sent me. I want to thank you so much for that, CC. That was awesome.
Martin's still waiting on his, but he won't give me an address. He keeps moving across the country.
Oh no, yeah, I'm down in South Carolina now. Just
like
got here last week.
He's a black program agent, Hey, Cobra, I'm only going to be here for 2 days. If you want to send it to me here and send it to this gas station, and I'll be here to pick it up. So I've been trying to get him to give me a more permanent address because he's suspicious of what I'm going to send him.
That's right. Yeah, I'm going to see if there's
what's the topic tonight?
Any ticking. Let's see. The topic is what happened in 2023. And we're just now talking about David Grush coming out. And, kind of everyone had their opinion of David Grush. And it sounds, that one of the things I was thinking of, Mark, after hearing what you said, is if it was some type of a misinformation campaign, it just seems like it would be so elaborate. And why? I mean, what would be the purpose of it all? I
don't know if it was misinformation, Martin, or they were going to get this information out there and they picked him to deliver the information because they knew they could control the narrative with him and he was interested in it. He has a long career of working with these topics. So his approach was, and being controllable, being from CIA background, they knew he wouldn't go off the reservation, so to speak. And
but why would they want to get the information out there in the first place?
Martin, look at it this way. If I was to give the metaphor, you have a dam and you have the water getting higher and higher. You have all this information building up the dam. So what do you do when the pressure starts to get high? You open up the gates a little bit and you control a flow out of the dam.
That's a really good analogy. I think
that's what a lot of these events are.
David Grush has admitted that David Grush has admitted that anything that he has to say, he has to run it through the agencies that he works for, and they tell him, this is what you're going to say. This is not what you're going to say. You're going to stay away from this topic. He's admitted that.
What I said before. It's exactly
podcasts.
right.
It's like when people want to write a book and they have to have their book reviewed and get suggestions on editing for it to be allowed to be published. It has that kind of rhythm to it. Doesn't mean it's bad, but you can be sure if something is going to come out. There's two reasons for that. You don't want to obviously endanger any ongoing program. You don't want to endanger people that are connected to it, and security and all those kind of things. Plus, if it's going to have something bad, you want to have the reaction. You want to have the response ready to say that never occurred or that we have a different view going forward with that. Now, I'm not saying he's involved in any of that part of it, but I think it fits in my mind that we have a government right now that really wants to control this message, and they have fibbed for so long. They don't know how to straighten it out. They don't know how to let it out. And these are just, and it could be counter groups, infighting that's going on, fighting for all those things that we've talked about. Obviously not NASA and at 100K. Come on, we won't even, we'll, I got to let that one die. But that's what they're after, is trying to, how do you survive this? How do you come out on top of it? And how do I preserve power, control?
And you saw what they did, though, and dovetailing on what you said, when Grush made his announcements, the whole hearing was over. Wouldn't you know, later on, someone leaks that he's autistic and he's this and he does this. He's had substance abuse or whatever the thing. And they go down the whole litany of his past. Who's releasing that information? Well, you know who's releasing it. Someone who's not the people that asked him to do this.
Right. Somebody
else who wanted a piece of that pie is doing this to sabotage and torpedo this activity. Everything is an activity in the government. The thing that Grush did was an activity. Okay, they tried to torpedo the activity. That's what they do.
The problem is that the government has different agendas. And you can see that when Lou Elizondo says, hey, I've been approached by high-level people saying that this is all demonic. And then there's other people saying, oh, this is all extraterrestrial, or this is all interdimensional. So you have a lot of infighting within the government on what the agenda is. And I think they clash in certain ways to say, hey, we're going to get this out, but we got to do it this certain way. Now, David Grush is a loyal serviceman, and I would not ever insult him because he's done a great deal of service for this country. But he's a tool, and all servicemen are a tool.
Well, willing. He's a willing tool.
He's a willing
to do this. Yeah.
Right. But I mean, so there must be something that he knows that he has to put out this way an agenda, because if there's something bad or nefarious or something of that nature, he wouldn't be that willing of a tool. And
no, but Commander Cobra said it best, though, Chris, that if the water's rising and it's going to overflow, you have no control once it goes over the top.
And but the dam breaks.
Right, exactly right. But if you can control the sluice gates and control the level of the water, that's a better option, letting out some of the water. And what is the water? Well, the water is the information that Grush released. Otherwise, it was coming to a head. It was going to become something untenable. And I think that, when you look at the other senators like Gates and all the others and so forth, representatives that actually went through and started coming on board with this, why are they coming on board? Is that a personal belief they have? And now they're getting a chance to feel like they won't be attacked because we're talking UAP, not UFO.
But why does the intelligence communities basically tell Tim Burchett we're almost shutting this down? Because Tim Burchett wanted to push this agenda. He wanted more whistleblowers to come out. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden Schumer pulls his bill. Tim Burchett is getting pressure.
I think Tim Burchett was threatening to break the dam. And that's what they don't want. They'd rather have that controlled sluice-gate process. And when Burchett starts to say, oh, I want to break the dam, no, shut that down. We'll do our sluice-gate stuff. We'll release it a little bit at a time. We have a plan.
So Mark, let me throw a couple things out. Chris has heard it before. Martin has heard it. So you've been involved in a terrible fib for decades. Are people that are involved with this concerned that there's going to be some kind of reckoning for institutional behavior, different agencies that have been involved in this? Is that part of it? This is the sad part when we lie and fib. I mean, there have been some things that have gone wrong in the military that at the time the military stood there and fibbed. I'll give you a really good example. We were working on terrain following radar for the F-111 aircraft, and they actually fibbed results. And the reason that they fibbed results is that they knew from insiders within then the Soviet Union that they were working on their version of it. And if we were successful, they were going to do something that was going to cause this capability to be countered. So if we fibbed and said that we were not succeeding where we were at the tests, if we came out and publicly took it, if the people that stood there that had to make the announcement took the beating, why did you, United States Air Force, spend all this money? How is this program not working? And have the press do that. They knew they can maintain this edge over the Soviet Union, and they did that. That was a real thing that happened, because when that technology was perfected, the Soviets had to react to it, and it overwhelmed them. And that set up the situation that you have with stealth. Stealth comes along and completely collapsed their house of cards. They built up such a capability that terrain following radar was that first thing that was going to defeat them, and it was actionable, and you were involved in the lie. The difference in this story is that when it was over and we had succeeded, historically it came out. It came clean. They stood there and said, yeah, a lot of people did lie because the lie was for the greater good of trying to force the enemy to do a certain thing, and we worked it out. But I think it's very instructive, the methodology, and then the lack of people coming clean. I think this has gone on so long, no one knows how to get out of it, and not when the poo-poo hits the turbo fan, no one knows how they're not going to get covered.
Yeah. That's the prescient point.
That all sounds good. Now we're moving along we're only at June 9th. So, but this is a really interesting one, I'll put it this way, and that is the Las Vegas 9-foot aliens. And I know, or 10-foot, I guess. So there was a lot of controversy about this one, and a lot of people said it was a hoax and all that. But there's one reporter out there that's not into UFOs or anything paranormal or whatever, and he was on this thing like a bulldog. He thought there was really something to it, and a lot of controversy. I thought it was very interesting that it happened 3 days after David Grush came out. I mean, it probably wasn't planned, but I mean, it just was interesting. That was getting so much more
focus. There's no conspiracies. There's no coincidences.
I mean, I got to tell you,
that was getting so much more press than David Grush.
But keep in mind that the reason this got legs the way it did is because there was an actual event that was conflated with a fictional event. In my finding, the actual event was a green meteor that you could see, and many times they are green. I saw one through rain clouds coming out of graduate school. I saw this meteor go right through the clouds. It was raining, pouring down raining, and I could see the meteor crossing above the rain clouds through the sky. That's how bright it was. Okay, so we had a meteor that got conflated with, and when, in fact, if you look at the timing of when that report was made, the timing is sort of what gives it away, because the timing occurred was like an hour later or something when they called and said, "Oh, there's aliens. They landed in my backyard," which implies that the green meteor released them. But the green meteor was 90 miles up in the atmosphere and heading away. So if it disintegrated, it landed probably 600 miles further away in the direction it was heading, if any of it made it to the ground. Okay.
If it did, yeah.
So right away, I realized this meteor and this report have nothing to do with each other. I can tell you that. And when I heard the reports of 9 or 10 foot tall aliens, and you listen to how they talk about it, that's another giveaway. When people lie, sometimes they're already regretting what they're saying as they're saying it. And these guys said that every single sentence. It was like, well, it was like this really like tall alien, kind of. And they didn't really even want to say it. They didn't want to play the joke anymore. But now they got the news attention, so what they got to go to the wall with it. And that's kind of what happened here.
I kind of agree with Mark. I think it was a joke that went wrong.
I agree with that. Yeah,
because there's no physical evidence.
Mark, the only thing I drew a similar situation to, there was some family a few years back that was they were trying to get on like reality shows, and they put a little hot air balloon up, and then they acted like one of their kids was trapped.
I remember that.
And it
taken away.
Just went crazy, and then they got it, and then the kid shows up for the interview, and you know that this poor kid has been told what to say, for the interview and everything that went on, and he ends up throwing up at the interview, and then the whole hoax comes out. This was completely fake. They were trying to get, and it just got out of control. It got away from them. That what they were trying to, because they wanted exactly publicity to put it up. And I kind of got the same feeling when I listened to this. Now, the part I want to know is this reporter that's hot on it, what has the reporter been able to find out about it?
I guarantee it. He probably hasn't found out a whole lot, he or she.
I'll look into that in just a minute. But one thing I wanted to say here is, I was just contacted tonight before this show. Someone sent me this video of this girl, I think on TikTok or something, was talking about the Miami Mall or Marketplace, that there was literally hundreds of police cars going in there and a black helicopter and all that. And it had to do with teens basically fighting and maybe fireworks involved and whatever it was involved. But there was, I never have seen so many cop cars come down on one place in my life. Never seen anything like it. But because somehow someone sparked a rumor that there were 10-foot aliens in the mall and people were shooting at them. And that is starting, and it's taking on a life of its own. And this is just hilarious. I think that it can start with someone can't understand why there's so many cops for these teenagers fighting in one location. And so now they're saying, well, it must be something more spectacular.
It makes me think that Alien Eyes needs to stay inside the house, Martin, that it could be dangerous to be cruising with these babies.
Martin,
we're going to put it out to the audience. There's a couple folks that really like the Alien Eyes. If they contact me, I'm going to get them a set of Alien Eyes sunglasses. I'm going to start.
I've seen those before.
Yeah. I'm going to start something here with UAP.
I'm contacting you now.
Okay.
Martin, we have had several reports. The police have had several reports all through history of neighbors thinking neighbors are aliens. We've had reports where guys have gone out with shotguns thinking that their next door neighbor is an alien. We've had reports of people saying that an alien broke into my house and he lives down the street. This is not uncommon. And this is one of the reasons why I'm kind of scared of how this disclosure agenda is going, because there will be people who will grab a gun and will go after some people thinking that they are aliens because it's already there. It's already happening.
It was that girl on the plane this last year that was saying there was
Oh,
a
yeah.
guy that was
poor
not
gal.
human.
Oh my goodness gracious!
Boy, was she convincing. She was so scared.
I would have
He's
stood
right
up and said,
behind you.
"That's me."
Can't you see him?
How did you see through my disguise? You'll never make it off this plane alive. Oh, I mean, talk about adding fuel.
Oh,
to the
someone
fire.
did a really good spoof. They go back, they show the camera back there, and it's a dog with sunglasses.
Yes.
I thought that was great. Yeah. But yeah, so let's see. Let's move on to now we have the July 26th comes around, the DC hearing. As I mentioned, I was there. But I don't know how many people in this group right here actually watched it, or any part of it you did.
I did the whole thing.
I thought there were some great questions that were asked that day, except there was one, I can't remember his name, but he was rather sarcastic. And but barring him, I thought there was some excellent questions from everyone. And I thought they really ran a really good hearing. I thought that was historic. And the amount of people that, I mean, I was there at 5:40 a.m. Donna and I were there, and we were the second to last. I was the second to last person in the door. Chris Lito was the last person in the door. Of 30 seats, there was over 1,000 people showed up for that.
Wow.
I mean, I just think that is amazing. I couldn't believe the amount of people. Yeah. Felt really lucky.
How'd you get in? Did you like draw lots or something? What'd they do?
He was
I got there at 5.
He was throwing that NASA bucks around.
That's right. No, I got there at 5:40 a.m. and I was number 13 in the line, but there was 30 seats and many people cut in line, including, George Knapp and Jerry Cornbell and all those, there was a bunch of people just cut in.
Yes, the people that think they are worthy of cutting in line.
Yeah. And, I mean.
That's when you really need something like Don Ecker to be standing right around 14 to straighten out that
Get your
kind of
butt in the back now, buddy.
Well, if I didn't call out the people that cut in front of us, we would have not gotten in. I scared them away and they ran off because I wasn't going to put up with that, standing there all that time. And these people, they showed up at 7 and they cut right in front of us. So anyway, but I thought it was a great hearing, and I thought it was very historic. And so opinions.
What's your biggest takeaway, Martin, or biggest takeaways from it? Aside from the fact that it was probably one of the more organized, and what I agree with you, the attitude of it seemed to be pretty mature. What was your big takeaway? Well,
I would say that the thing that struck me, I don't know why it struck me, but it really did, is when David Grush was asked, about the non-human entities, and he just leaned right into the mic and said, non-human. And I mean, that was such a thing you would just never imagine you'd hear that at a congressional hearing. Right. And but I guess what the biggest takeaway is that they took it serious. They took it serious. They were professional. There was no ridicule. There was no. I thought everyone presented themselves very well. David Fravor was excellent. Ryan Graves was absolutely excellent. It was just amazing to see how well they could answer the questions, and I thought they all had very good opening statements, and it was really good.
I think the reaction, as you're saying, the reception of that is the other part. When you consider other events and the reaction that's demonstrated by those that are running the hearing, that was definitely not what I would have expected. It didn't turn into something that other events have definitely indicated. There is a quick reaction, a quick switch that gets flipped to turn it into something else. It stayed on target. It stayed on the stuff there. It was almost to the point, I would say, it was respectful how it went. So I think that was probably one of the biggest events of the year. I didn't see it live. I went back because of you talking about it, to look at it. And I looked at it a couple times, different parts of it, and above average, better than I give those kinds of things credit towards. So that may be one of the most poignant events of the entire cavalcade that we've seen this past year.
I think
actually, I agree with that. I think that the most important thing was that there was a national audience for this, finally. And they were actually willing to entertain it. In fact, Congress may have been told they have to entertain it. I'm not sure which direction it came from. Congress demanding this, or the agencies pushing to open the sluices a little and get this information out because they saw something down the line. Now, here's the take too. There's a couple of reasons why all this could have come out. And let's take the other side of the coin for a moment. And Commander, I'm sure you're familiar with this type of approach too. If you have a program you're working on and you need some kind of diversion, okay, this would serve as a diversion for something that could be mistaken for the content of this meeting, okay, if it looked that way or appeared that way. So if they were doing some kind of new propulsion device or whatever, then they could say, see, Grush was right. See, you saw what Grush was talking about. In fact, maybe this is, and this is the devil's advocate side, they could be covering for a black project. Okay. I know they do this. I was involved with one that's now no longer classified. I'll tell you about it. There was it's on Wikipedia now as Project Cormorant, like the bird, Cormorant. And if you look it up, you'll see it's been canceled. He says with a smirk. Okay. Now the thing is that the funny thing about it is, I was building the engineering models for this so it was like a Lockheed Martin project in the Navy. Okay. So as I built the models, it was classified. So then when the project culminated with testing a final version out in Idaho on a big lake, at one end of the lake, many, many miles away, was a resort. And far down at the southern end was a Navy base. This is the deepest lake in the United States, okay?
A lot of testing of subs during World War II there.
That's right. You know about it. Yeah. In fact, I did a model of that lake for the Navy, a cube of water model showing the entire facility in the bottom of the lake. Oh, yeah. I did two of them, actually. So this process, okay, of testing this thing took place there. And the idea was this thing comes out of a missile tube. It's all on, you can read it on Wikipedia, public knowledge. Opens up its wings on the surface, takes off and flies like an aircraft, does recon, comes back, slides onto the water again, folds up its wings, ballasts down, and goes back into the missile tube and goes home. So it was a totally standoff reconnaissance solution where they wouldn't put anyone in harm's way, and needless to say, not even the crew of the sub. Okay, well, they're testing it at this lake. Okay, they're testing the concept. At the north end of the lake at the resort, someone sees it. They see it flying around. They see something flying around. They get in their car and tool down the side of the lake and take pictures of it. Flying. I get the pictures. As MUFON's chief photo and video analyst, now what do I do? Uh-oh. I'm in this program. So my first call was to the program office down in Washington, D.C., and I said, listen, guys, and this is to your point from before. Listen, guys, they're seeing, we call it the birdie. They're seeing the birdie flying around at the lake, and they think it's a UFO. And I got laughter, and I said, what do you want to do about this? They said, let them think it's a UFO.
I wonder how much
water's
of that
getting
happened.
to the top of the dam.
Yeah.
Right. And then I said, well, okay, well, let me, okay, I got that, and I'll do that, but let me just say this. This is one guy who took this picture. He's going to go back to 10 of his friends and say, there's a UFO out there. Really? Let's go see. And 10 guys with cameras are going to go down there. And then 20, then 30. The next thing you know, a photographer is going to capture and publish a photo of the birdie doing something you don't want them to know about.
Interesting.
And I got met with crickets. And then he says, okay, I'll issue you a statement. And the next day, I got an email statement. I put it out there and said, it's one of ours. That's all it was. It didn't have to say what it was, just one of ours. And all the photographers went home the very following day. And there were no more problems with photographers.
So Project Blue Book.
That's really interesting, Mark.
Yeah, that's correct.
Project Blue Book was caught doing this
Mm-hmm.
years later by showing up at UFO conferences, showing up at conventions, folks, not in uniform, getting in there and seeding information to really enthusiastic UFO researchers, enthusiasts, whatever you want to, that were involved.
Yeah.
And they did it because they were covering things like SR-71s, other projects that were associated with it. And it was a useful way to keep people that were looking into the sky coming to conclusions and papering up a lot of information. It's just not uncommon.
That's right. It's a UFO. We don't know what it is.
I talked about this with Mark on his show or when he was on mine. When I would do exercise work, in fact, Martin, not far from where you're at right now, a few years back, flying a lot at night doing ISR, intel, surveillance, and reconnaissance for exercises. I would check UFO chats and sites to see what people were saying that they saw. Often in these exercises, we have to work out airspace and fly the aircraft blacked out. And I was looking for what they were spotting. And every time we did these ops, local people would see us and figure it out. And it was a way for me to measure how effective I was at hiding for the exercise. And this is just plain old airplane, nothing, believe me when I say nothing cosmic about what I'm driving around. I wish. But it was an interesting way. And if I am using that in a subtle way, if I'm using that public information in a subtle way, I know that I'm doing something and I want to see if it's picked up on the public. That's the basis of this open crowdsourcing that has become so popular with the intel agencies. They are now actually throwing stuff into social media just to see how it is talked about, how it spreads around, and what the commentary is. And the beauty of it is you don't need a lot of classified people to do it. You just pay a bunch of people that are online to, like the telephone operator in Manhattan, listen in on the calls and see where the conversation's going, see where the interest is at.
Mm-hmm. And it's so much easier with social media now.
Absolutely.
Right.
Martin, if I could, I'd like to just interject about the hearing, getting back to the hearing. I thought David Grush did an outstanding job, because if you remember the hearing before, they had Laurel and Hardy trying to explain that they don't have sophisticated computers to show slowdown of pictures from that they had before. And it was just really a joke compared to this one, which I thought was very well. But what surprised me about this hearing that David Grush was in, he said some things that I'm surprised the media and other people haven't keyed on. And that is, he said that people have been killed.
Yes. Right.
And I thought that was so significant that was said, and yet it died out. It just flattened out, where nobody in the mainstream media or anything else have said, what do you mean people have been killed? How? Why? Yeah. There was no follow-up to something that's the most serious thing face.
There may have been, Chris, but the answer is, well, I can't tell you, and then it goes into a dead end at that point.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that even the mainstream media would say David Grush, whistleblower, comes out and says people have been killed over this. David Grush has said that people have been murdered. David Grush says that we've done the most heinous crimes over this secret. Now, I expect the government to be quiet on it. but I don't expect the mainstream media or even ufologists not to really jump on that. It was very surprising.
It sure took an interesting off ramp pretty quickly,
didn't it?
It just didn't hang very long.
And who briefed him to allow him to say that? I mean, either somebody fell out of their chair when he said that,
which is possible.
Somebody said, yeah.
Which is possible. He could have said something he wasn't supposed to. Because I noticed a few times he seemed to be actually talking from a genuine point of view. So in other words, like I said, I think that the agencies that he worked for, I say agencies plural because he did, okay, or still does, the agencies that he worked for gave him a list of the potential, the envelope, the world that he could speak about. And, they don't want him to deviate from that. And that's my feeling. Okay. And they selected him because he was into this stuff and probably very, very much a believer himself. Right. And so I think they picked him to be the guy. I don't think he went to them and says, hey, I want to talk about this stuff. I think they went to him and said, we know you like this stuff. We're going to make you the front guy.
Well, he was part of the UAP task force. He was part of that.
Right. And again, it's the same thing. They wanted to make him the front runner. They wanted to make him the leader, the guy that's going to deliver the message. And you saw him in practically hideous glee talking about this. I mean, he was just he was ebullient talking about all this stuff, And
I think that's his personality, that, him being on the spectrum, as he mentions, just the way
that's also a personality of someone who says, I know I'm not doing anything wrong. I know I can talk about this because this is one of the points they said I could talk about. Yeah. That's the other possibility. Either way,
and do you really think,
it's unprecedented.
Do you really think one of his talking points was about killing people, murdering?
I think that one was, I don't think that one was an approved talking point. I think that was one of his that he just threw in there. And he probably was admonished for it later because he didn't offer any follow-up to it. And that would be the deadly mistake if he did. Okay, because that
I don't know. Do you know? Does anyone know? Does anyone know if he did on the Joe Rogan show? I actually didn't watch that myself, but
I don't remember him making the remark. And I know that the point that Chris has made, it is the lack of reaction to it that I find much more interesting than the statement that he's made.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I find so compelling.
Well, it was also pretty shocking to everybody watching because he's making all these revelations and everyone's heads exploding. And by the way, people died. Yeah. Okay, but what? Yeah. We have alien vehicles.
And bodies.
Tell me something I don't know. We know that.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on to the Peru attacks. That was really bizarre.
What's going on in Peru?
It seems to be something going pretty recently.
Yeah.
Until it's dropped off.
Yeah, they said the government came in and said that it was, they were just gold miners that were illegally mining gold, right. And they had the jetpacks. Well, that's baloney. Jetpacks cost $250,000 to $400,000 a piece. There's no way that people are going to have several of them, which was just a really bizarre statement, in my opinion. I don't know. I did have someone. These people were terrified, though. I mean, you look at this picture right here. This is not a good example, but there are some pictures and videos of these people. They were just horrified of whatever it was.
But those are folks that, in general, they'd probably be amazed by a technology that we take for granted as well, because they probably haven't had the exposure to that kind of advanced technology before. So
I know, but do you think they really had jetpacks?
No, I don't think they had jetpacks. I think that's a misidentification based on, some tool that the miners, if that's what they were, and I tend to believe that story, actually. I tend to think they were miners, illicitly mining. They may have been
especially if we have any kind of rare earth mineral involved with this.
Yeah.
The kind of nonsense that is going on, for the kind of money. And I'm not talking NASA chump change money. I'm talking real dollaros that are going on with this. Doesn't surprise me that this is going on. One of the pictures you popped up there, Martin, shows what looks like a jetpack. And I got to tell you,
It's on the iPhone, right?
Body position on that looks like somebody who's in a rig.
It looks like, see the feet? That's something you see people at resorts using and flying with.
Right.
You know? So that doesn't.
But why would they do it anyway? Just to terrify? I mean,
no, I think that there's probably some function. And of course, if you're going to go to people that are highly superstitious, what's your first thing you're going to do? You want to keep them away. So what do? You play on their fears. You know, so maybe they come up with some things with their fears. And maybe they did find a guy that has a jetpack and flew it around on only one day. Okay, thanks,
it was supposed to be three of them. There were three
maybe
of them.
So.
Yeah.
Maybe so. Maybe they did, but maybe it was to set up the whole premise to keep people away, and that was worth the expense to bring someone in to just fly around and strike fear into the hearts of people around there. I mean, I might do that if I was trying to do that, right? I might figure out a way to scare the populace if I was the guy doing that, right? I mean, if I was a rotten, no good, money grubbing person, which I'm not.
But Martin, nobody got hurt. No, I mean,
I think someone did get their neck, their throat cut or something. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
By how? By a knife?
I don't know, but I think there was someone injured at first. But I'm not. That's what I remember, and it's just off the cuff. I can't tell you for sure.
Right.
We only have about 5.
If I'm an alien with sophisticated equipment, I'm sure that if you're going to get blasted by something, you're going to have a hole through your body or something of that. You know what I mean? If somebody got a cut on their neck or something of that nature,
yeah.
I mean, you guys want.
Let me throw a quick one out on you.
Aliens don't walk around with butterfly knives.
Right. Yeah. But how about if somebody is suspended by a cable or a rope and they look like they're flying, and in the dark you get caught up on your neck or an arm and you get that there's just not enough facts. There's enough things that thrown in there that you want to go on. What I think is really interesting about this is how pervasive this has been going on. And now it's
that's right.
It's dropped.
And it's not only just there, it's also in other parts of South America. I had a guest on my show that was investigating all that, and very similar things happening in other places. But it could be, something organized. I don't know. But we only have like 4 minutes left, something like that. And we can't leave this show without talking about this. Okay. I don't know about you, but as any of you, but as soon as I saw that at the Mexico hearing, I want to say, when was that exactly? Was that
November?
That was the September 13. Okay. That's when that happened. And Ryan Graves went to that. He was involved in that. And then he apologized to the UFO community because he didn't realize what was going on.
He didn't realize Jaime Maussan was a guy that doesn't do any critical thinking.
And there's like 15 different situations where Jaime was involved, very similar to that. Yeah, someone had a whole timeline of things that he's done similar. Yeah. So anyway, I don't know. I don't know if anyone has followed up on what the latest is, but he keeps touting that there's total science on this. Has anyone followed up or?
He said there's total science on all of his farces he's done.
Yeah. And these his own scientists. There's no outside scientists looking at this. I don't know if any of you saw the spoof where someone has this. It looks just like this, and all of a sudden he cuts it. It's a cake.
Right.
I love that.
So you give an example, right? Real quick. Maussan did that to me. Okay. I took imaging science to task. He was showing me some images, and I said, "No, this is a hoax. You got this UFO sighting is a hoax. You've got this tiny 3-foot UFO on top of a building. It's not 30 feet like the kids are saying. I can see the reflection of the roof, and based on the amount of the roof I can see, I can project it's about 3 feet above the roof. on a pole. Okay. Suddenly the kids change their story. Oh yeah, actually it was a 3-foot UFO, not a 30-foot UFO, trying to reclaim it. Then my son got mad at me, and he said on his show that I didn't know what I was talking about, and I was I wasn't good at imaging analysis, and he had his own image analyst expert say why I was wrong. And you know what he said? This is Musan. This is classic Musan. The imaging analyst said, well, the reason that this D'Antonio guy is wrong is because the aliens can make you see whatever they want you to see.
Oh yeah, that makes total sense.
That's Musan in
It
a nutshell.
fits. Yeah, it totally fits. So yeah, we have just about a minute left. So I want to say we'll be back next week. Marc D'Antonio was our soft Don Ecker tonight, a very soft Don Ecker. And
I like Don. He's great.
And we love Don too.
Yeah, he's a good friend.
There's a place in the world for everyone. So and for Don as well, and we'll welcome him back next week. But anyway, thank you very much, Mark, for filling in.
That wasn't the least bit uncomfortable. That one actually went really well, Martin. Thanks.
Thank you, guys. I think
Mark, it's great to see you, Chris.
Good to see you guys. I'll be back maybe someday.
Yes, Mark, we'll have to have you back on. It was wonderful.
Happy New Year to the
Happy New Year to everyone. Everyone have a wonderful 2024. And we'll be back next week. We're not sure what the topic will be, but we'll figure something out.
They're going to be coming.
That will wrap it up for us all. Good night, everyone. And as they say down in South Carolina, good night, y'all.
No.
Y'all.
Wow.